Hello, everyone, and welcome to Stories at the Way LA. My name is Sam, and I'm so excited to be here with you guys today. Thank you so much for being a part of hearing an incredible story of what Jesus has done. Today, we have a very special guest with us. His name is Danny. What's up, bro? How you doing?
What's up, bro?
Good to see you.
It's going good.
Glad to have you on, bro.
Thank you.
This is going to be super fun. I'm excited to hear more about your story. I know a little bit, and I know everybody watching, maybe there's some people out there who never met you in their life and are excited to hear from you because they're looking to be encouraged, transformed. Share a little bit about how you grew up and some bad things that maybe you were exposed to, bro.
Yeah, so I grew up actually with my a little bit with my mom, but I also grew up with my aunt and my uncle. My mom, she was real unstable. My dad actually was locked up since I was 1. So he was in prison since I was 1 year old. So I grew up with my mom, and my mom, it was a very unstable household. She was addicted to drugs. And so she would always have different men coming over and stuff. And so I seen a lot of like abuse.
It's hard.
A lot of abuse. And like, I remember one time my mom actually got a knife pulled out on her. And the guy had like stole a laptop from her or something like that. And I remember I went to go look for help and stuff. And it was just me and my like other siblings. But most of the time my oldest brother was gone. And then my sisters they were like little infants. So we were actually taking care of our younger sisters.
Wow.
So we were like 8 years old, if not a little bit younger, taking care of, our siblings. And my brother was like, at the time, he was like 10 or 11, and I was like 6 or 7. And so we were just really we seen a lot of abuse. And then my mom would bring, again, different men, and they would even abuse her in front of us. And so my brother would try to step in, but, obviously them being older and stronger, we weren't able to do much. And so finally, my aunt actually got involved, and my dad told her, like, oh, do you mind taking Danny in for me? And so she said, yeah, because I used to be off and on with my aunt when I was since I was a newborn.
Okay.
So it wasn't new to my aunt. She would always take me in, take me out. But then whenever my mom needed, like, because my mom was on food stamps and all that, so whenever they needed to come and invade, she would want me back. So I was at school in San Bernardino, but I would go all the way back to Pomona because, it would just mess up the routine that I was already in. So finally, my aunt took my mom to custody, and she told her, like, my mom told her that, I think it's better that you take him because I can't give him the life that you can give him. So my aunt actually took me in, and I remember I used to blame my aunt. I used to be like, you're the reason why, like, my mom doesn't want me. And she used to tell me, like, no, that's not the reason. She was like, you don't understand now, but you understand when you get older. And so I used to blame my aunt, and I used to always bump heads with her. It took me a while to adjust because she also had 4 kids of herself. So she took me on with 4 of the kids, and it was like hard, like trying to grow up around people I didn't even know. I went to the house when I was kids, but I didn't really like know them as much, So really trying to get them to know better and know better of them. But it was very hard at that age and stuff. So I grew up with my aunt and my uncle. They did the best they could for me. And it wasn't until I want to say elementary, I started fighting. I started getting into a lot of drama. I remember in 2nd grade, I would draw these pictures, and it would be like of my mom and my dad. And I would be like, oh, like I want them together. And even my teacher, my aunt used to work at that school. She was a lunch lady.
No way.
So when I would get in trouble, they would just walk me to the lunch lady and be like, your nephew's and he's fighting or he's talking back. And my aunt would get me in trouble. And it got to a point where my aunt told him, like, look, I'm at work and I can't deal with this right now. And so I got out of hand, and I would get in, I would just draw. And I for some reason, I love drawing. As a young, I was able to draw about,
like express
express my feelings. And then eventually that led to me writing music. So I started writing music. I started writing lyrics and stuff. So, around my teenage years is when it really kicked off. I really started getting like major fights. I started getting into like different women. And a lot of that I started seeing in my own household. I grew up with two other cousins that were boys, and they were older than me. And I seen them, partying, drinking, and doing certain things. So I thought, hey, like, this is the way we're supposed to live.
Yeah.
I didn't have that influence to teach me, like, oh, live this way, live that way, And, again, my aunt and my uncle, they did the best they could. And sometimes I felt otherwise. I felt like, man, they could have done this, or they could have treated me more of this. But I think it was just mainly, like, they had their own set of kids. And, I would, of course, they looked at me as their son, but coming from a family that's not even my own, it didn't feel like that.
How did it make you feel that your dad was in prison since you're a one? How did you feel about that?
So I don't think I really met my dad until I was like, well, from when I was first born, probably to like 6, maybe. And I remember the first encounter I actually remember of my dad. I remember he was locked up out here in Chino, actually. And I remember visiting him, and we walked in, and I was like, what are we doing here? Like as a kid, I didn't know why we were here or anything like that. And so I went in there, and I just seen like different people around different other inmates, like people visiting. And so I was like, what is this? And I remember my aunt told me, she was like, oh, your dad's about to come. So I would hide underneath the table, like if he didn't see me.
Oh, man.
And so he would come in, and he'd be like, oh, where's Danny? All excited. And, he would tell me, and I would ask him every time I had a visit with him, when are you coming home? Are you coming home?
Man.
And I remember him telling me, he would tell me soon, but as I got older, I actually read a letter of his, and he said that the day that really changed him was the day that I asked him that he said that he just wanted a little boy just wanted his own father in his life. And so it kind of broke him. And so he used to get in a lot of fights. And I remember he was telling my aunt one time about a fight that he got into. And I asked him, I was like, Dad, don't you want to come home? Like, why aren't you doing better? And he said that from that moment, like, broke him. And so my dad said from that moment he started changing. But my dad was sentenced to 24 to life, so there was no hope. He had every right to just be like, I'm done. Like, it is what it is. And I remember him even telling me he thought about hanging himself. He thought about killing himself. He was like, I'm not going home, so why even try? And stuff. So I feel like without my dad, I used to see other little kids with their moms and dads, and I used to ask my aunt, like, where's my dad? Or where's my mom? How come they can't be here? How come they aren't able to be there for me? And so it would just kind of like bring that questioning.
So being exposed to that rejection and that questioning,
exactly,
that led to a lot of decisions that you made in school.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's go back to that. What were some of those decisions you made, and maybe what were some of the effects of those decisions you made? Like, were you in depression? Did you, like, what kind of fights? Let's talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so a lot of people would always say like, "Oh, where's your dad? Where's your mom?" Because they knew my aunt would take care of me. So they would kind of make me angry.
Antagonize.
Yeah, antagonize me, and it would make me upset. Man. And I used to bottle all this anger up until finally one day I would just explode on somebody.
When was that? Was that in like elementary?
Yeah, elementary. I started getting into fights. People would be like, "Oh, that's why you don't have your mom or your dad." And so I would just blow up on them.
Like bullying.
Yeah, like bullying. I actually went through a season that bullying. I would try to be accepted. And a lot of kids would actually push me away and stuff like that. So it led to a lot of rejection. I feel like that's when I started dealing with the rejection. And so my aunt would always tell me, she would always do her best. She would always take care of me. She would always tell me like, oh, like, I love you, but sometimes she didn't know how to vocalize that. So she was always like trying to just take care of me. But instead of like she didn't really say I love you, but she was more of like, she didn't know how to show emotions. And then that was also to the way that she was raised up. So it's crazy because all this was actually a generational. This happened with my dad, this happened with my mom, and this happened to my aunt. And so it was just going on and on and on with different family members.
And speaking of your mom, I know you mentioned there was like an addiction problem there too. Did that ever play a part in some of your decisions later on in school or anything like that?
Yeah, because so my mom used to always tell me every weekend, she had visitations to come pick me up. But my mom, she never knows how to drive. She doesn't know how to drive. She never had she was always in the system kind of, food stamps, growing up on housing. And so she used to tell me every week, oh, I'm going to come get you. I'm going to come pick you up. She used to get me super excited. And I used to go right there by the window waiting for the next hour. And she would say, oh, I'm going to come. I'm home. I'm 30 minutes away. And an hour will pass. 2 hours will pass. And later on that night will pass. And I would call her like, hey, where are you? And she never would answer. So my aunt would actually get upset. And so my aunt actually stopped letting me see my mom because of that reason. Because all it was damaging. It was even affecting me in my school. That my teachers would ask my aunt, like, oh, what happened? What's going on with Danny? And they were like, oh, well, his mom didn't come for him again. So it started becoming a habit. So I remember when I used to live with my mom, she would always, like, chase after a guy, or she was always in a different relationship. She was always, she used to go in the room, and she had, like, this black bag. And I always knew what that was. I already knew she was up to no good, because every time I seen a black bag, I just knew it was something that was off. And so I started looking for different women because I wanted someone to love me the way that I would love them. And it's crazy because as a young age, you can do me dirty, you can do me wrong, but somehow, some way I was able to forgive you. I was able to just let that
Like
go.
look past it.
Yeah, like look past their faults. And I feel like, with my mom, I was looking in different, that's why I would be in different relationships. Even at a young age, I started sleeping around with girls, I think in elementary. So the spirit of lust was already strong on me. And so I started dealing with that because, again, I had two older cousins.
Especially with the rejection, too.
Yeah, the rejection.
Trying to find someone who will like make you feel appreciated and stuff like that
Exactly.
at that age.
So I would look for that in women.
Right.
Because I'm like, I want them to love me. I want that
acceptance.
That love. Yeah, acceptance that my mom never gave me.
Wow, yeah.
So I would look for that in different women.
And then as you got into high school, let's talk about high school. Where did those problems start to grow? Like what started to happen? Did it get worse?
It got 10 times worse. So I was actually a little famous in middle school, high school.
Like popular?
Yeah, I was real popular. I used to hang out with a lot of popular people. And that led to I was actually part of the football team. But even before that, I did music and my music blew up. And so a lot of people would hit me up like, hey, bro, let's do a song together. Like, I love your music. So it brought pride. So I started feeling pride. Like, man, people want to be around me, So I started separating myself from different crowds, but actually the worst crowds. I started going to parties, drinking. And then that's when I met my wife in high school. But before I even met her, I was in different relationships. And so I would break up with them and go with another girl. So so that's when I met my wife in high school. I met her at San Bernardino High School. Mm-hmm. And it's crazy because she knew me since middle school and I didn't know anything about her.
That's crazy, yeah.
I didn't know anything about her. But I guess her brother never liked me. So it was a weird thing. So, yeah, her brother never liked me. And so I started talking to her. I remember she was in my math class. And I had told one of her friends, oh, she's cute. And then, so I met her. I started being with Nayeli. And then I want to say 6 months into a relationship, we started having a baby. We had a baby. Well, we got pregnant. And so we had baby Danny. She was 15 turning 16 and I was 16 turning 17. So we were already kids having kids, you know. So we were young kids. But yeah, I was still running a month. I was still doing the things that I wanted to do. I was still being with different girls.
So now you're in high school.
Yeah.
You're in a relationship. You have a son. And like you said, you're not faithful.
Yeah.
In the relationship, right? And there's all kinds of stuff that's happening. Yeah. And it's all a consequence, right, of things that you're exposed to and you made the wrong decisions. Talk about now the lowest point for you where these decisions catch up with you and you're left with, what do I do now? And you're put into a place where you need to choose the Lord.
Okay, so this happened, I want to say, back in 2020. Back in 2020. So I was actually me and Nayeli had broke up. Baby Danny was about 2 years old, and I was in 2 different relationships at the same time. I was with different girls, these 2 other serious relationships, but one of them I was actually living with her, and so we were living together. But again, I was unfaithful, and she actually caught me being unfaithful, and she ended up leaving, and so when she left to Oregon for about 2 months. And I had moved out. I had to leave where I was staying at. So I actually ended up homeless for a little bit. And then she ended up coming back. So she came back. We got an apartment together. And again, she only lasted 2 weeks. She left. And during that time, before she even left, I got arrested. I got arrested. She left. I lost my apartment. I had to move out on the day of my birthday.
What did you get arrested for?
I got arrested for smuggling aliens. So bringing immigrants from the border.
How does that happen?
Bro, it was so crazy. I needed money in the time. I was struggling. I was barely working. So I had I had a car payment. So I was like, man, I need to come up with some money. And what's crazy is, so you get paid thousands of dollars for doing that. And what's crazy was I found out that I wasn't even going to get paid for that. So I got arrested. It was a good thing that I got arrested because it was I wasn't even going to get paid for that. I would have done something for no reason. Yeah. And so they took my car. So I was actually arrested for about 7, 8 hours. And so they took my car. They dropped me off in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of at a bus station. And they just said, okay, find your way home. And I was like, what the heck? This is crazy.
Wow.
So Nayeli actually paid for an Uber to come pick me up. And so I went back home that same night. I didn't get home until 6 in the morning. All this happened at 7 at night. So I didn't get home until 6 in the morning. And then that's when my ex had came back. We got back together. We were living together, but then she left again 2 weeks after that. And so when she left, I was sitting in my apartment by myself. And like, I used to love the dark. I could just sit in the dark when no one around. I don't know what it was, but like the dark caught my attention. And I remember just sitting in the dark, and out of nowhere, I heard this voice. Like, it was like audible, like if I'm talking to you. And his voice said, "It's time to come back home." And I was like at first I thought someone was in my apartment. I was like, what the heck? But little by I started to understand, like church started playing in my mind. Because I used to go to the way when I was younger. I used to go here and there, but not consistently. And so when I heard that voice, the first thing I could think of was just church popped in my mind.
Right.
And so I remember I just got a desire to watch online. So I started watching online. I started looking for the way. And I remember Pastor Marco was speaking, and I would just listen to the sermons, and I just started crying. It was like a welcoming that I've never felt in my life. It was like something that just started, like my heart started racing.
Wow.
I started feeling like joy.
Yeah.
And I just felt like this is what I want.
It was like real for you.
Yeah, this is what real. Like everything that I've been tasting, everything that I've been doing is so fake because eventually it leaves for a moment. It's there for a moment, but it leaves.
Right.
But this right here, it felt like my heart was just like full of love.
Right.
And so I remember I told myself, I'm going to church. Like, I'm going to start going to church. I'm going to check this out, see how it is. You know, it doesn't hurt. And I remember God gave me a vision. He said, go look for Pastor Gabe. And so I went to go look for Pastor Gabe. And I remember this was all during COVID. So I had a mask on. I was listening to the worship music, and I was, like, real nervous. Like, I just felt shaky. But, like, a good nervous. I was, like, super excited.
Like expectant type.
Yeah,
feel.
I was expecting, like, man, what is this? Like, I've never
happen?
been here.
Yeah.
And so I was there. And I remember, I forgot what Pastor Mark was preaching, but it was so strong that I started crying. And I just, like, I didn't know why. And I just felt like, I felt like a love of a father that I've never experienced in my life. And I was looking for that. And I remember Pastor Marco said, if you want to give your life to Jesus, you know, raise your hand. And I raised my hand like this. Like, I didn't go fully. I was a little nervous. But at the end of that, I was like, wow, like, you know, this is different. I've never felt this. And I remember when God said, look for Gabe. I was looking for Gabe. I couldn't find him. So I started getting discouraged, and I almost left. I was like, man, this is fake. And I heard this voice tell me, like, let's just go. This is not for you.
You can't find him.
Yeah, you can't find him. Let's just go. And I remember I turned, and I was about to walk out, but then I looked to my left, and I hear a whisper, look to your left. I look, and literally Gabe's right there, right in front, praying for somebody, bro. It was crazy. And so I went up to Gabe, and I was, hey, man, you know, I'm struggling. I'm going through some things. And he was, okay, like, let's connect. So I connected with him, and that was like my first encounter with God.
What did you feel when you gave your life to the Lord at that moment? And you said you just felt like it was good, right? Like, what was going through your mind? And for some people that haven't given their life to God, how did it feel for you?
So when I was sitting in the seats, I felt like my heart was racing.
Okay,
I
right.
felt peace.
Yeah. Oh,
I
good.
felt like I don't know if like there's a good anxious, but I felt like how you said
anticipation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, oh, what's next? You know, like I was like, I'm ready to grow. Like everyone's moved on. Like I'm here by myself. No one's even here for me. No one's checking up on me. Like it's just me and God at this point. And so I never believed that God was able to do something for me because of all the things that I've done in my life. You know, the sin that I was in, the stuff that I've engaged in. And so it was just real hard for me to accept that. But when I finally allowed God to pour into my life, it just felt like I was accepted. Like I never felt that in my life. I never felt accepted. That's why I would do the things that I did, because I was trying to get accepted. But it was like, it doesn't matter what you've done. Like, I love you. I love you. It doesn't matter what mistakes you made. I love you. And so that's when I started feeling like, man, like heart racing, peace, love, and just joy.
Now that you're saved and you feel accepted from the Lord, share a little bit about your relationship now with your family, maybe with your aunt. Like, how have those things changed? And a little bit of your relationship with Nayeli, now loving them from a place of acceptance.
Me and my aunt, we're actually we're doing better.
That's
we're
good.
doing better terms. Me and my uncle, we have a better relationship. And I actually have a way. My dad actually got released 2 years ago.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, he got released. I remember when you invited me to Holy Warriors.
Yeah.
And I remember I went up for prayer, and I went up for prayer, and I just was bawling, and I had to forgive him. I was like, I have so much unforgiveness towards him for the things that he's done, for the way that he's left me, and how he just left me for 20-some years and doing this life on my own. And I remember I was praying, and I prayed. I forgave him. 4 days later, he calls me and says, hey, I'm going to board. He wasn't supposed to go to board until 2027. This is 2021, I want to say, or 2022. He goes aboard and they say like, oh, we're going to release you. And this is a lifer, never ever supposed to get released. So God was showing me like, this was a missing puzzle for me to release him. Like, don't ever underestimate what I can do.
Yeah.
And so God showed me that. I was like,
That's
wow,
so cool.
that's so crazy. So my dad actually got released. And now me and him have a better relationship. Wow. My mom she's actually getting closer to God. She joined Holy Warriors.
What?
Yeah, so
Dude,
God is just
sick.
moving. God is moving. So my relationships, and especially my wife. Me and my wife, we got married. We had baby Danny, and we just had another baby on Christmas Day.
That's so
my
cool.
baby Ayla.
On Christmas,
and so
too.
yeah, bro, God is restored from something that was broken, something that I thought could never. I used to tell myself, I'm never getting married. I'm never gonna be married, bro. I was like, I'm not committed to that. Like, I can't be committed to one wife
for the rest of your life.
Yeah, I couldn't. But I remember like God like changed my heart. He broke those like that heart of stone. And he was like, don't ever forget what I can do for you because I love you that much. Man. And we got married. We had another baby. And so it's like God has been moving. I actually just did my first sermon yesterday. And so I'm walking in ministry now.
Wow, it's good.
God's moving, bro.
Pastoral training.
Yeah, and I'm barbering.
Barbering.
I just got my license.
Just got your license. That's tight.
Bro, God is moving, bro. So it's like blessings on blessings. Like the Bible says, "For I know the plans that I have for you, plans that are for good and not for evil." And I didn't know God had this plan. If I would have known this 8 years ago, bro, I would have given my life to God a long time ago. But I feel like sometimes we get so entangled in our sin, we love it. Because like we don't want to change because it requires us to change.
Yes.
And so it just my whole life's been transformed.
That's so awesome. And I love how you said it does require us to change. His love requires us to change, and we want to change to become more like him because we love his love and we love him, and we can't change before we come to him. Exactly. And that's the hardest thing for some people to understand. It's like, just give it to him.
Yeah,
like you said, surrender.
Give it. And
he can take care of it.
It's so good, bro. He's so good. Like, he's changed my life. My life has been a full 180. My life has changed, transformed. Amen. I'm faithful now.
Yeah.
No longer am I dealing with anxiety. I used to deal with bad anxiety attacks, really bad depression, fear. And no longer, like, I've run into people that I had problems with, and we just if we never seen each other before. Like, before I used to get into fights like that, but now it's like God has protected me. Wow. He says that those that dwell in that shelter, in that secret place, I'll cover you. Yes. And so it's like God has been covering me, my son, and seeing my son even walk in the Lord now. It's like, wow, God, like, what more? I can't wait to see what you have for me.
Exactly.
Can't wait.
Well, if you were to say one thing to someone who's listening right now to encourage them to get closer to God, maybe they have family where their dad is not, present, and their mom is emotionally maybe not present. Maybe they're living with their uncle and aunt. And what would you say to that little Danny, or to that person that's listening right now that needs to hear about Jesus? How would you encourage them? What would you want to say?
Oh, man, I would just say, like, don't give up, because God has not given up on you. I know many times the world would tell you, like, oh, don't forgive, don't let go, hold on to that bitterness. But the Bible says, if you hang on to your life, you lose it. But if you give up your life for my sake, you'll save it. And so when I gave up my life, and I gave up my own desires, and I gave up the bitterness, the anger, the hatred towards them, I found peace in my heart. That forgiveness was not just for them, but it was mainly for me. I had to release myself from that. And so many years, it carried me so many burdens. I used to always think, like, man, how can I change them? But the reality is I couldn't change them. Right. I couldn't be like, hey, Dad, can you make up for these 20 years? Or, hey, Mom, can you make up for this time where you never showed up? I had to forgive. And once I forgave and once I let it go, God just restored me. And look at my relationships now. They're restored. I'm on fire for God. And I would just tell them, don't give up. Allow God to move in your life. The Bible says whoever calls upon the name of the Lord will be saved. Mm-hmm. That's a promise. Mm-hmm. God says, I will save you and I will deliver you. So I would just say, seek God and watch what God does in your life. He'll change your life upside down. The Bible says, seek the kingdom of God above all else and live righteously. And everything else will be added to you. Right. So the peace was added. The joy is going to be added. The love, eternity, salvation. Yes. After this life, you go into eternity. Because we got to remember, we're here for temporary. Mm-hmm. We're here for a shorter time. So it's like, don't hold on to that. Yes. Allow God to move into your life and really just let him be God.
Let him be God.
Yes.
I love it. And you definitely did that, bro.
Yeah.
And we're so thankful for that. Awesome testimony,
Thank you,
bro.
bro. Appreciate
Powerful. Definitely speaks restoration. I pray it does encourage everyone here.
Yes.
So we thank every single one of you guys for joining us today for Stories at the Way LA, where you're hearing powerful testimonies of what Jesus has done in people's lives. Today we heard about what Jesus did in Danny's life, and I know that God is speaking to you even right now. Go ahead and share this with, 3 people. Just 3 people that are right there on your contact list. Maybe send it to everybody in your contact list and share with them, hey, I just watched this story of how God changed somebody's life and it encouraged me. Click the share button, click the like button, click the subscribe button, click all the buttons, click comment, and comment your favorite thing about Danny's story. We love you guys so much, and make sure that you don't miss out on the next story. Click that notification bell, and we will see you next week for another powerful story of what God has done here on Stories at the Way LA. God bless you guys. Have a great rest of your day.